Welcome to Cold Case Mystique. In today's video, we're diving into a collection of intriguing cold cases that have baffled investigators for years. We'll explore the mysterious details, the twists and turns, and the latest updates that might just crack these cases. Let's unravel these mysteries together. Marie Heizer. In 1977, Marie Heizer, then 50 years old, resided in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. She was married to William and had 2 kids. In addition to being a housewife, Marie worked part-time at the former Ashbourne Country Club in Cheltenham, Pennsylvania. Her spouse William served in the Highway Patrol of the Philadelphia Police Department from the 1950s until his catastrophic injury on the 1960s. William Jr., Marie's son, discovered his mother had disappeared when he returned from boarding school one day in 1977. After then, William Sr. informed his 2 kids that their mother had abandoned them. Though he was too young to ask many questions, William Jr. thought it odd that Marie's possessions were still at their house. A teenager in Townsend, Delaware, while riding home in a forested location in June 1977, came across human remains. Townsend is approximately 65 miles south of Mary's Philadelphia residence. It was impossible to identify the remains. When dental records and fingerprints produced no matches, the case was closed. Researchers took a DNA profile out of the remains in 2008. Despite being added to a national DNA database, no matches were found. The sample was delivered by the investigators to Parabon Nanolabs, a Virginia-based company, in 2017. A forensic artist employed by them drew a sketch of the victim using a sample of DNA. Parabon Nanolabs was also able to construct the victim's family tree through genetic genealogy. In 2019, Stephen Smogoreski, a police officer in Montgomery County, Maryland, assumed responsibility for the investigation and diligently pursued fresh leads on the identity of the remains. Eventually, in January 2021, detectives were able to verify that the remains were Marie Heizer's. When they discovered his mother's remains, William Jr. received a call from the investigators. "We were shocked to hear what he had to say. A phone call like that is something you never anticipate. Even though the plot is terrible, at least there is some resolution. You think to yourself, where was our mother? We used to wonder. We're now curious as to what become of her." One door shuts and doesn't open. William Jr. doesn't think his mother's absence was caused in any way by his father. "I would never injure anyone again except for him. He was a family man, a saint who never argued, raised his voice, or did anything else." When William Sr. was unable to continue serving as a police officer, he worked as a truck driver. In the late 1970s, he relocated to Daytona Beach, Florida. He died in the year 2006. One of the numerous issues they are looking into, according to Michael Eckert of the Newcastle County Police Department in Delaware, is William Sr.'s statement that Mary had left the family. If you're fascinated by true crime and enjoying the video so far, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up to stay updated on all our latest content. Moving on to the next case. Pamela Butler. It has been 7 years since Pamela Butler disappeared from her house in Northwest District of Columbia, which was surrounded by dubious circumstances. No one has ever been apprehended in connection with the investigation, and her body has never been located. The members of her family have arrived at the tragic realization that it is quite likely that she has passed away. Derek Butler, Butler's brother, expressed his belief that his sister would never vanish on her own. He stated that he felt this to be true, being under the impression that she must have been murdered as well. Derek was the one who initially noticed the mysterious disappearance, which was accompanied by the doors of his sister's home being closed. He was looking for explanations as to why these doors were sealed. The house was a complete mess, and the alarm was not working. Because of this, Derek came to the conclusion that his sister's disappearance was the result of some sort of evil. Following Pam's disappearance, her family would then investigate the surveillance system that had been placed in her home. It was possible to show her entering the residence on videotape 2 days before Valentine's Day, but she was never seen leaving the house. During the course of many days, the surveillance system captured footage of Pam's ex-boyfriend entering and exiting the residence at different times of the day. In addition, one of the blinds that covered the windows was raised, which left Pam's brother bewildered because she was not known to raise that blind in order to maintain privacy. The only side of the house that was not being monitored by video surveillance was this particular side. Derek has a sneaking suspicion that this is the manner in which the body of his sister was removed from the house. Her ex-boyfriend, who was thought to be a significant suspect, stated that they had broken up and that he was merely collecting his possessions from the property. He was being investigated as a major suspect. It is true that he was questioned by the police multiple times, but he was never charged. It should be noted that there has been no arrest made in connection with the case. Over 7 years later, it is still a mystery that has not been solved. Moving on to the next case. Pearl Pinson. Pearl Jan Frances Pinson was a girl who loved to laugh and had a caring soul, according to those who took the time to get to know her. Pearl was a very typical adolescent who attended Jesse Bethel High School in Vallejo, California, when she vanished on a spring morning. She was a fan of skating, makeup, Guns N' Roses, and spending time outside. She was also a fan of spending time outside. Pearl, who was 15 years old at the time, walked to the school bus stop that was closest to her on the morning of May 25, 2016, just before 7 o'clock. During the course of her journey, she allegedly engaged in a dispute with a Hispanic male who was wearing a black hoodie and who then produced a firearm. The teenager was dragged away to a vehicle that was waiting for it, as witnessed by witnesses. During the course of this episode, which took place in broad daylight, Pearl was traversing a pedestrian overpass along Interstate 780 at Taylor Avenue in Vallejo. According to reports, Pearl's face was covered with blood, and she was yelling for assistance. Only a few moments later, the same witness who had witnessed her kidnapping heard the sound of a single gunshot firing. In spite of the fact that they contacted 911, the authorities were unable to locate the adolescent and the Hispanic man by the time they got at the location. There were very few signs that were left behind. Only a blood stain and Pearl's cell phone were left when everything was cleaned up. Fernando Castro, who was 19 years old at the time, was quickly identified as the Hispanic male. Castro was a minor offender who had a few run-ins with the law, but he had never been involved in any serious crimes such as kidnapping, murder, or stalking. The revelation that he had been stationed at the location when Pearl disappeared came as a complete surprise to his family. At first, it was speculated that the two individuals might have been acquainted with one another, and that Castro might have been Pearl's boyfriend. However, the detectives were unable to discern any connection between the two individuals. It was not possible to find any evidence that they had communicated with one another. Castro was spotted driving in the vicinity of Sir Francis Drake Boulevard, close to the San Rafael Bridge in Marin County, California, approximately 2.5 hours after Pearl went missing. Another sighting of him behind the wheel occurred the following afternoon. Castro's vehicle was pursued into Santa Barbara County by law enforcement officers from the California Highway Patrol and the Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Office. Following that, a gunfight broke out between law enforcement and the 19-year-old who was apparently the first person to start fire on the officers. As a result, Castro was taken out of the picture during the gunfight. The only thing that could be recovered of Pearl was her blood, which was discovered in the trunk of his automobile. Pearl was not in his vehicle at the time. There was no further communication with the adolescent. In the vicinity of 300 miles south of the location where Pearl went missing, Castro was murdered. The investigators did not have sufficient evidence to conclude that she had died or suffered serious injuries based on the blood that was discovered in his vehicle. The authorities, on the other hand, indicated that they were unable to guarantee whether or not she was still alive. On the other hand, given the amount of time that has elapsed, it is not impossible to believe that she is still alive, although it is highly improbable. In the course of the following year, there would be 2 sightings of the teenager, both of which would take place at the Pittsburgh BART station. These sightings, however, were not confirmed to be true. According to a news report that was published in 2017, investigators discovered new evidence that leads them to believe that she may still be alive. According to reports, the authorities initially had a suspicion that Castro had traveled to Jenna, which is located in Sonoma County, immediately after Pearl was missing. They caught the 19-year-old on video at a gas station close to Bodega Bay after searching through hours upon hours of surveillance film using a closed-circuit television system. Despite the passage of 9 months, the Solano County Sheriff's Office has informed the media that there is no evidence to show that Castro was responsible for Pinson's death at this time. There has been no evidence of Pearl in the years that have passed, despite the fact that detectives were optimistic about the situation at the time. The belief that the adolescent who went missing was a victim of sex trafficking is one of the most prominent hypotheses regarding this case. On the other hand, the investigators have not been successful in locating evidence that supports this theory. The absence of any evidence suggested that Castro was the only one involved in the incident. Nevertheless, Rose, Pearl's older sister, is of the opinion that this could be the reason why her sibling passed away. An claimed sighting of the young woman, who would have turned 21 years old if she were still alive, was investigated by Rose around the beginning of 2021. However, it appears that this lead has been exhausted. Rose was informed in 2019 that the investigation would not be the primary focus of the police since there simply was not enough information or evidence for them to work from. Despite Rose's efforts to maintain track of the case, she was aware of this information. Since that time, the investigators have not been able to maintain communication with the family concerned. Rose claims that she is unable to reach anyone when she phones, and she has tried numerous times. When Pearl Pinson, who was 15 years old at the time, was taken into custody by Fernando Castro, who was 19 years old, she was making her way across a pedestrian overpass along Interstate 780 near Taylor Avenue. Prior to the kidnapping, there was no evidence that the two were in a relationship with one another. Pearl is described as a Caucasian woman with blue or green eyes and light brown hair that was tinted green when she went missing. Her hair was light brown before she went missing. Approximately 5 feet 3 inches tall, she weighs approximately a pound 130. Her disappearance occurred while she was dressed in a black and white zip-up jacket, a gray sweatshirt, black leggings or sweatpants, and pink, black, and white Nike turf shoes. She was also wearing a gray sweatshirt inside the jacket. On top of that, she was wearing a black Raiders beanie hat. At the time that Pearl was last seen, she was wearing a backpack that was black and turquoise in color and featured a Joker insignia on it. It is stated on her Charlie Project profile that she may be in need of medical attention for reasons that are not completely addressed. It is estimated that Pearl will be 21 years old if she is still alive. According to the license plate number 5XZD385, Fernando Castro was a Hispanic male who drove a 1997 Saturn with 4 doors and a gold coat of paint. You are encouraged to call the Solano County Sheriff's Office at 707-421-7090 if you have any information regarding the case of Pearl. Moving on to the next case. Rico Omar Harris. Rico Omar Harris was an outgoing, athletic, and once awardly world-renowned basketball prodigy went by simply Rico to the basketball community and those who followed his career. All those who knew him, from Los Angeles College basketball fans to the Harlem Globetrotters, were left searching for answers in a deluge of evidence that left us all in disbelief. His dynamic and entertaining skill set, brave battle against addiction, and apparent recovery were cut short by an unexplainable, untraceable disappearance in October of 2014. This left us all hoping to provide more substantial reasoning based on observable evidence and situational analysis. This explores the mystery of Rico Harris's disappearance in Yolo County and the hills around Cache Creek. Henry Harris and Margaret Fernandez welcomed Rico Harris into the world on May 19, 1977, in Los Angeles, California. The Harris family immediately grew close to one another after briefly relocating to Oregon to accommodate Henry's new career, but they soon returned to Los Angeles to raise 3 more children. The Harris brothers experienced violent and abusive tendencies from their father when they were youngsters. In particular, Rico was frequently the object of Henry's wrath, bearing the brunt of his insults even as he matured into a teenager who yearned for his praise. Margaret finally lost patience with Henry's collision course and moved to Alhambra, California, with her kids. The oldest brother, Rico, took it upon himself to provide for the family, and he took care of his siblings while Margaret worked a full-time job. Rico chose to pursue acting at the age of 15, despite his parents' advice that he employ his large stature in sports. He made the difficult decision to drive all the way from Alhambra to Hollywood High School in order to increase his prospects of success. Rico, however, only realizes after a year that he was meant to be a basketball player, and he uses his father's address to enroll in Temple City High School. Rico was an enormous young guy, standing 6 feet 8 inches tall and weighing a pound 250 when he was 16 years old. He quickly established himself as the dominant player on the basketball floor, overwhelming his opponents and thrilling the spectators with his fast-paced performance. Inspired by Magic Johnson, he turned a once dormant high school club into a formidable program that attracted college scouts as he exploited double-team defenses. He was an introspective teenager with little academic ability off the court until he found a girlfriend whose family encouraged him to get better grades. Rico was able to achieve even more success in basketball as a result. In his final year, he averaged 28 points and 15 rebounds, and he was compared to some of the best recruits in the Western United States, like Paul Pierce and Jason Terry. Rico regrettably lost out on scholarship offers from prestigious colleges like UCLA since he didn't score well on the SAT. Rico had to enroll in school at Arizona State in order to be eligible to play basketball again. Rico struggled in his schoolwork and social life since he was away from his close-knit family and friends for the first time in his life. Along with 2 other teammates, Rico was temporarily charged with unlawful imprisonment in March 1996. However, the charges were then dropped, and Rico was informed that he would need to sit out a second year of sports in order to clean up his act. Rico transferred to Los Angeles City College because he could not bear to lose any more valuable time. He was able to sign on with the basketball squad and make himself known right away. While still playing at a high level on the basketball court, Rico led the LACC clubs to a state championship and was named Most Valuable Player. However, by his sophomore year, he was falling behind academically and leading an unhealthy lifestyle, drinking alcohol all the time. Rico stopped recruiting colleges because he was afraid they would just be interested in his skills rather than his psychological growth, and he filed for the NBA draft when he broke up with his previous fiancée and realized his mental health was failing. Again, though, this plan was doomed to fail as Rico continued to put off important occasions to display his abilities in order to be near to home. Consequently, he declined multiple East Coast offers to play Division I College War, withdrew his name from draft consideration, and transferred to Cal State Northridge. Many people believed it was a bad decision for Rico's future professional life, and sadly, they were right. Rico tried to make amends with his father Henry during the summer break between semesters, but he was quickly turned down. Rico's lone bad season at CS Northridge was spent in a purgatory of social and emotional neglect, where he lost interest in the NBA and continued to lose focus. Rico turned to semi-professional basketball as soon as he was eligible for college in order to pursue his NBA goal. Before choosing to sign with the hilarious demonstration basketball team, the Harlem Globetrotters, he played for pickup teams in San Diego, St. Louis, and other places. Just 1 month into the Globetrotters gig, Rico tragically found himself in a brawl in South LA, where he was struck in the back of the head by a baseball bat. Rico barely made it out alive, but his career as a basketball player was effectively ended by headaches and balance problems. Rico battled alcoholism for 7 years before spiraling out of control and turning to heroin, meth, and cocaine after returning to Alhambra with his mother and siblings. Actually, Margaret Harris, the siblings' mother, did everything in her power to support them while they battled their demons of substance misuse. All of the Harris siblings suffered from some form of addiction. Rico attended treatment after turning 30 years old in 2007 in an attempt to get real aid. Although the program took longer than expected, Rico was able to overcome his addiction in the end. He got into a love connection with Jennifer Song, a Seattle insurance broker, in 2012. Over the course of the following few years, Rico and Jennifer grew close. After a while, Rico made a permanent relocation to Seattle and began preparing for a married life with Jennifer. The two discussed starting a family and creating a bright future. Rico even managed to set up an interview for a position as a property appraiser, a remarkable chance in light of everything he had to overcome. But Rico had to return to Alhambra once more in order to achieve closure with his family before he could complete the metamorphosis. On October 9, 2014, he visited, had supper with his brother, and gave him a brand new smartphone. Rico then went to see his mother and had a private, one-on-one chat. It's unclear what came of the exchange, but it's thought to have gone against Rico's intentions. Just after midnight, Rico left again for Seattle, making his last stop at Lodi, California. That was the last time anyone saw Rico Harris before he vanished into the North Sacramento wilderness. Early in September 2014, Rico and Jennifer, his girlfriend, enjoy a close, hopeful relationship and start discussing their future together. But Jennifer senses that something is wrong with Rico because he acts strangely and becomes disorganized. Rico admits he stopped drinking during the summer of 2014 after she keeps asking him questions. Jennifer felt unbalanced by the reversion to an old behavior, even though it hadn't become a habit yet. David Lara, a long-standing buddy who had renewed their acquaintance at the same time, confirms Rico's relapse. Despite their prior disagreement, Rico and Jennifer decided to move in together in Seattle, Washington, later in September to further their love. For Rico, who has previously struggled while separated from his close-knit family and city of Los Angeles, it is considered a huge undertaking. The pair had deep talks about getting married, starting a family, and discovering genuine love, but Rico is still uneasy in his new environment. Rico takes nearly a month to unpack because he felt uneasy settling into a place that wasn't his own. Jennifer claims that rather than lingering doubts or laziness, Rico's sensitive underlying will to support loved ones was what fueled the insecurity. Things start to improve in the first week of October. Rico has an interview with a nearby real estate company to work as a property assessor. Rico ultimately unpacks his possessions in Jennifer's home, a statement that he's ready for change and that he intends to stay in Seattle, since the new opportunity brings him happiness and encouragement. On October 8, 2014, the happy mood abruptly changed when Rico told Jennifer that he was going to explore later in the day. This was unusual for Rico, but Jennifer didn't really think twice about it and said goodbye to her fiancé. Later that October 8th, when Jennifer called Rico, Rico told her that he was leaving for a visit with his family in Los Angeles. Rico explains that he wants to put his troubled childhood past behind him and rebuild his relationship and future with his mother. Though shocked, Jennifer accepts his hasty decision and understands his intentions. Jennifer recalls Rico appearing to be in the right frame of mind and sounded eager to move on. On October 9th, Rico arrives at Alhambra the following day. Margaret, his mother, saw his confidence about his flourishing life and his joy about the recent changes. Margaret believes Rico may have been under the influence of drugs or alcohol, though. On October 9th, Rico enjoys dinner with one of his younger brothers after leaving his mother's house in the evening. He gets his brother a new phone, and the two share old memories. Rico returns to Margaret's home in Alhambra following the brothers' rekindling in order to have a private discussion and once more find the closure he longs for from a broken-up upbringing. The talk ends quickly, and Margaret says afterwards that she didn't feel Rico gained the emotional disclosure he had hoped for from it. Soon after Friday, October 10th, around midnight, Rico made the decision to return to Seattle instead of staying the night as his mother had anticipated, so he might have more time to prepare for his interview. He leaves his mother's house with a few additional personal items in tow. About 1 o'clock, Rico gives his mother another call to apologize for his hasty choice. Margaret remembers his kid saying something like, "I have things I need to get done." Rico contacts Jennifer immediately after speaking with his mother, shocking her once more with his early return home. After 3 or 4 hours of conversation, Jennifer suggests that Rico find a motel and get some rest because he has been awake for more than 40 hours. When Rico does turn around, he expresses the wish to take a little nap by driving up to the neighboring mountains. Jennifer offers an alternate route, telling him that the dark, winding roads would be hazardous in the middle of the night and that he wouldn't have mobile coverage at high altitude. When the two hang up, Rico is still determined to drive. 8 a.m. After sleeping for a few hours on October 10th, Jennifer gives Rico another call. Rico tells her he's stopping at a petrol station in the Californian town of Lodi, which is close to Sacramento. On the other end of the phone, he sounds quite exhausted. About an hour later, Rico receives another call. This time, it's his mother inquiring about his well-being. Rico acknowledges his tiredness at last and says he will find a place to eat and relax. Jennifer and Margaret both contact Rico several times during the morning to inquire about his intentions for rest, but Rico never answers. Following several fruitless attempts, Jennifer texts him. 10:44 a.m. When Rico does text Jennifer at last, he claims he's doing well but doesn't go into much information. This concludes anyone's formal correspondence with Rico Harris. Jennifer attempts to give Rico some undisturbed downtime as the morning turns into the afternoon, but her nervousness overcomes her and she phones him anyhow, still receiving no answer. Jennifer convinces herself that he must still be in the Californian mountains and that the phone service issue is to blame. Jennifer officially succumbs to Rico's quiet between 7 and 8 p.m. and phones Margaret with concern. Margaret, on the other hand, appears composed and surmises that Rico is simply acting independently, which is consistent with his nature. Rico appears to be singing inadvertently when he catches himself singing along to music in his parked automobile sometime before midnight. He also flings several CDs from the passenger side around. Later on, it is discovered that these videotapes have a timestamp from the evening of October 10th, proving he was still alive and able to operate at that point. Rico's phone shuts off at 11:15. It's unclear if Rico did it on purpose or if the battery died. Jennifer and Margaret wait to report it even if Rico doesn't return calls or travels back to Seattle on the weekend of October 11th to 12th. Recalling that he once vanished for a few hours without anyone knowing and that it took him a few days to return. A Yolo County deputy sheriff conducts a routine search of a remote rest stop parking lot at Rumsey Canyon, located along California State Route 16 in Rumsey, California, on Monday, October 13th. He spots a black Nissan Maxima parked in the dirt lot over to the side, but he doesn't stop it. When the Yolo County Sheriff goes back to his route on Tuesday, October 14th, the following day, he discovers the Nissan in the same location in the parking lot. After running the plate through his database, He finds that Rico Harris, whose address in Alhambra is still connected, is the owner. When Margaret receives a call from the Yolo County Sheriff's Office informing her that the automobile has been located, but no one is there, she phones Jennifer in an attempt to interpret what both ladies have described as a bizarre dream. Margaret formally reports someone missing to the Alhambra Police Department, and a criminal inquiry is launched. Police organized a massive network of searches and rescue workers over the course of the following week or so. Overlooking the surrounding areas are helicopters equipped with demography cameras. For the hilly search area, all-terrain vehicles are commissioned, and cadaver dogs are sent out to detect any residual traces of Rico. The team searched a 27-mile stretch of Rumsey Canyon along Route 16 and a 5-mile radius around the parking spot overall, but they found few hints other than mysterious tracks in the dirt beside the road. Police used cell phone data to speak with neighbors and get some comforting reports of sightings from Sunday, October 12th, but nothing solid comes to light. Again, shoe tracks in the soil are discovered when investigators receive a tip on October 19th regarding the sighting of a huge guy going along Route 16. But when authorities linked the footprints and earlier eyewitness accounts to the October 19th evidence, they came to the conclusion that Rico had, for reasons that were unclear, left his car near Rumsey Canyon, strolled along Cache Creek, and then returned to the original position. The strongest basis for subsequent theories would come from this discovery. On October 22nd, a few days later, the search is scaled back and gradually reduced. Midway through November 2014, divers went back to the nearby bodies of water to document additional searches, but they once more turned up nothing suspicious or useful. Since the mystery of mid-October, no one has discovered reliable evidence that could direct law enforcement to solutions or inspire plausible theories apart from conjecture. As of right now, all that remains of our investigation is what we discovered during those few weeks of work, leaving the entire process muddled and full of unanswered questions. The majority of the concrete clues in Rico Harris's disappearance were found during the first week or two of searches, but none were more puzzling than the rucksack and cell phone found on a railing near Cache Creek on Route 16. Following the examination of cell phone records obtained from the provider business, data pings directed investigators to the Redwood Valley region of Northern California, approximately 70 miles northwest of the original location of Rico's vehicle. Authorities left notes on voicemails requesting tips from as many residents in the nearby villages as they could, in an attempt to cover all the bases. The plan began to bear fruit quickly after lead investigator Dean Nyland got a call from a man in Redwood Valley who said he had discovered objects that belonged to Rico. After responding to the tip right away, police discovered that the Redwood man did, in fact, possess Rico Harris's black book bag. He had his cell phone and jumper wires inside the backpack. The guy described how, while traveling along Route 16, he, his wife, and their grandson noticed a stray rucksack on the highway's curb, which seemed remarkably out of place given the surroundings. The young boy informed his grandparents of this. The three yelled into the woods in the hopes of getting in touch with the owner of the bag as soon as the man stopped. Checking the bag for identification, the Redwood family discovered that nobody was at the creek. They brought the phone with them in the hopes of charging it and making touch with someone, as all they could find was the wires. Authorities believed the rucksack to be Rico's right away. Jennifer, who saw the package right away, said the bag looked like a purse. It was also discovered within 1,500 feet from a sighting that a bystander had reported earlier in the week. Someone who had observed a big African-American man on Route 16 standing next to the guardrail. When the officers examined the cell phone and went through its contents, these suspicions were validated. Extracted from the phone would subsequently turn out to be vital visual proof in building the chronology of Rico's last known activities. Rico had films on his media gallery showing him singing along to songs in his car, but he didn't seem to realize he was taking his own picture. Rico was observed stowing CDs throughout the cabin, tearing up random papers, and fiddling with the sunroof controls in addition to his careless singing. These videos were recorded in the late evening on October 10th, which indicates that Rico was present. This suggests that Rico provided evidence for the vehicle's dead battery and low petrol supply. When authorities hauled the car into the station, it looked like it had been looted, which was partially explained by the fact that Rico had been kicking around stuff in the car. Above all, though, the mobile phone recordings provided officials with a clearer picture of Rico's mental state at the time of his last communication with his family. Rico's latest drug relapse was believed to be caused by alcohol consumption during his stay at Alhambra. A weak mind would undoubtedly result from spending a significant amount of time awake for almost 50 hours in a row and having emotionally taxing interactions with his family. Rico may have been driven insane or extremely tired as a result of this, his erratic behavior, and his history of personal hardships. The mobile phone, backpack, and overall significant case point definitely indicate that Rico was in trouble, if not from a third party, then at least from his own damaged and bruised self. In the Rico Harris case, the first and most widely discussed notion evolved into a convoluted, speculative tale of foul play. The Yolo County Sheriff's Department came up with the theory after discovering the Nissan abandoned and seemed to have been looted. Investigators discovered Rico's wallet, still full of items save for a Discovery credit card, was left behind in addition to the disarray of documents, CDs, and bottles in the backseat. The automobile had a dead battery and no gas, and it wasn't parked in any of the designated spots outside. Police determined that Rico made a mistake and traveled northeast on Route 16 after stopping for gas in Lodi, California. He stopped to relax at Cache Creek Park in Rumsey Canyon, let off steam, and eventually arrived in Baton with a third party. Investigators surmised that the gas had probably been siphoned in order to explain the car's problems. Beyond a few possible sightings, this explanation would also explain how a 6'8" and 300-pound man could fall through the cracks so effortlessly. That kind of man usually doesn't disappear unnoticed unless someone else helps them, drives them away, or does something really evil. The cell phone recordings show Rico sitting in an inactive car on October 10th, which further clouded the foul play theories when his backpack and footprints were found. It's probable that he juiced the batteries from prolonged use of the engine and the audio system, running out of gas. Rico may have allowed his car to run through the night of October 10th and into the weekend of October 11th and 12th, as average cars may use 1.5 gallons of petrol per hour only in idle mode. It would also assist to explain why jumper cables were in Rico's hands and why the car's interior was a complete disaster. The tracks along Route 16 suggested that Rico traveled along the highway to flag down people, which suggests that he was likely looking for someone to help jump his battery. Additionally, there were no DNA results to support the presence of a stranger or third-party interference. Therefore, investigators theorized that Rico had problems after hitchhiking along Route 16, even though he most definitely did not face foul play while in his automobile at Cache Creek. They think Rico was taken advantage of by someone or someone with criminal intent while he was strolling and chatting to anyone who would stop to help him. Rico was probably not in the best of moods that weekend, and if he appeared worn out or disoriented, his abductor might easily convince him to leave his backpack inside and get into the car. Why anyone would take the chance of interacting with a man who is virtually certain to have a physical advantage, not to mention carry no cash, is a little puzzling. It's important to keep in mind, though, that Rico relapsed not long before going missing. How likely would he have been convinced to take cocaine or other substances if someone had offered them to him? This person may be anyone: a possible assassin, a drug dealer, or someone who is desperate for a man of Rico's caliber. Sadly, other from sifting through locals with criminal histories, there are very few connections or links connected to the foul play scenario. Given the size of Northern California and the Sacramento region, there are almost endless possibilities. Many people also believe that Rico was attacked and captured by a huge predator or wild animal. There is a good variety of wildlife in Northern California, including ferocious animals like black bears, mountain lions, and rattlesnakes. Of course, a rattlesnake may bite and poison an unwary human, but if Rico had really been bitten, his body would have been discovered by multiple search parties or by helicopters hovering overhead. Despite their intimidating appearance, black bears are actually fairly kind and rarely engage with people, much less a big man the size of Rico. The mountain lion is the only species that makes sense, but it would take a very powerful cougar or pack of cougars to kill Rico and then carry his body into a habitat or habitation cave that is off-limits to people. In the arid stretch of Ramsey Canyon, the search revealed no blood or evidence of struggle, and once more, Rico's sheer size likely discouraged wild animals from approaching. Furthermore, given the time frame of his disappearance and the ongoing manhunt, if he did pass away in the wilderness, his body wouldn't have to bury itself beneath the surface and remain hidden. The final theory surrounding Rico centered on a staged disappearance and planned getaway. This plot highlights Rico's past indecisiveness and likely disappointment with the closure he was hoping to find upon his return to the Alhambra. The story's proponents contend that Rico decided it would be best to disappear without a trace and flee to a new location after realizing he no longer liked the life he had dreamed for in Seattle. According to the notion, Rico might have purchased a second phone to use for his escape, and his brother may have assisted him along the way. Rico also purchased a new cell phone for his brother. Rico chose to sneak out, citing his booked interview as justification, as his mother's talk became sour. Rico gradually cut up communication with his mother and girlfriend while traveling to Sacramento. He also took a diversion from Interstate 5 to Seattle and headed east to Cache Creek. He recorded himself acting agitated upon his arrival, possibly even staging a kidnapping or robbery. Rico left the car with his old phone and rucksack once the gas and electricity eventually ran out, looking as though he needed assistance with the jumper wires. Rico chose to create a distraction by leaving the backpack and phone behind as he flagged down a car to hitchhike. Some even claim that the person who picked him up knew about his scheme and had a connection to both Rico's fake absence and his new life. Ultimately, there are a lot of contradictions in this notion. Rico had insisted to everyone he knew about how encouraging the chances were in Seattle. He had recently moved to Washington State, was in regular communication with Jennifer about getting married and starting a family, and had really settled in. The missing Discovery credit card that was discovered missing from Rico's wallet was also tracked by the police. The account was never assessed or used after October 10th, indicating that if Rico escaped, the money he would almost certainly need to carry out such a scheme came from sources other than his own money. Considering the dexterity and inventiveness required to accomplish such a feat, the likelihood that Rico would not have staged the mental breakdown seen in the selfie films, and the coincidental difference in Rico's recent outlook on life, it is very unlikely that Rico would stay at his presentation and then flee. Prior to disclosing our theory regarding Rico's enigmatic disappearance, we would like to clarify that the conclusions we reached are entirely conjectural and grounded in factual subtext, evidence, and circumstances. We only have access to the same information that is shown in each video, and we just watch, investigate, and report, not attempting to make any firm or expert guarantees regarding the conclusions we draw at the end. In this instance, we think Rico kept abusing drugs due to intense psychological suffering and extreme fatigue. He also may have gotten lost on his way and ended up alone and unobserved in the wilderness, where he most likely perished while being concealed by the elements. Rico coped well throughout his life without having a loving, nurturing father. Rico internalized his passion of basketball and sought his father's praise despite the verbal and physical violence he experienced as a child. Rico never really distanced himself from Henry Harris, even after he and his siblings moved in with their mother. Rico exacerbated the simmering stress from a difficult upbringing when his basketball career faded and he turned to drugs and alcohol. Rico encountered his own father in jail following an arrest for public intoxication, further complicating the situation. Rico suffered psychologically from these humiliations and unresolved tensions. After he vanished, Jennifer discovered evidence of untreated melancholy, anxiety, and potentially bipolar disorder. Given his past mental health issues, a return to substance abuse, family issues, or other setbacks would have left Rico feeling hopeless on his drive back to Seattle. His heart and mind were permanently damaged when his attempts to make sense of his history failed, and he was left with deep scars. As a result, Rico deviated from his intended path after experiencing emotional instability for more than 2 days straight. Rico most likely took a wrong turn on his way up north, which led him into the mountains of northern Sacramento and into Ramsey Canyon. Rico then found an outlet for drugs and alcohol and picked some up between stopping for petrol in Lodi and parking in the lower area of Cache Creek Park. Hard drugs are known to be widely available in Sacramento and the surrounding areas, so a former addict could probably find them and buy them without too much difficulty. Rico either took the medications and then collected them or felt the full power of the negative effects after he parked. It's possible that he used methamphetamines or crack during the trip in any case. These stimulants would account for his extended periods of wakefulness. The Nissan Maxima's crucial hint, discovered after the car was towed into evidence by the police, provides the basis for the drug theory. Under the passenger seat, beneath the glove box, investigators found a bindle, a plastic wrap intended especially for drugs. Now, the bindle in question was empty and did not have any drug paraphernalia or residue in it, but it did suggest a recent tendency towards substance abuse. Additionally, 2 empty and half-full bottles of alcohol were discovered, both of which were assumed to have been consumed by Rico. Rico left the lower location and strolled along the highway guardrail after the car ran out of petrol and electricity. After leaving his phone and rucksack on the curb, he strolled over to the creek to cool off and get a drink. The search teams discovered his massive footprints there a few days later. Rico spent some time by the lake before discovering a quicker route up the hill to return to the road, a location that was distinct from the one where he'd left his possessions. Rico managed to hitchhike and find his way into a small town or place where he could freshen up and obtain food while he was still planning along Route 16. A pair of vagrants in Clear Lake, California, claimed to have seen Rico purchasing drugs in the region once, but they provided no other information or specifics to support their claims. This theory's final section is a bit hazy. It's entirely unclear with whom Rico interacts during the course of the following week, but he stays out of the spotlight and goes back to Ramsey Canyon's lower side, where his car was parked on October 19th. This evening, there was a report of a large African-American male being seen traveling in that direction. Additional footprints in the vicinity by the police corroborated the allegation. Rico was most likely dumped off so he could get back to his car, but when he saw it had been taken away, he either chose to stay in his newfound freedom and march into the woods, or he went back to the original automobile. The real enigma lies in what transpired after. Rico was noticeable, as was already said, and his profile made it difficult to blend in. Perhaps he fell into a valley or sinkhole that hid him from searchers. Perhaps he committed suicide in a remote area of the untamed trees. Whatever the specifics, Rico Harris was struggling with problems that none of us can comprehend or overlook. Whether it was anxiety and drug usage combined with sleep deprivation, a melancholy episode brought on by previous events, or something else entirely, Rico wasn't acting normally. His careless actions in the cell phone films demonstrate this, as well as regrettably casting a dark cloud on his subsequent unpredictable behavior. Rico's past drug use and addiction have been frequently discussed by the Harris family and close associates of Rico, which has tarnished Rico's reputation and clouded the public's view of the case. It is important to clarify that Rico was a kind and considerate person despite his drug abuse. He is not any more of a bad guy than you or I, and he deserves the same amount of attention as any other missing person. The stigma of addiction will be damned. Addiction is a mental and physical illness that can negatively impact one's emotional and physical well-being. Addicts fight not just against their illness, but also against the ongoing denigration of society and those who view addicts as failures due to their behavior. Rico Harris ought to be located. He was a brave man who bravely faced great suffering all of his life. After a perilous night, he at last saw the light at the end of the tunnel when dawn broke. He cherished his relationships with friends and family as well as changing people's lives. Rico had athletic talent, but he also had compassion. It only seems fitting that we return the favor in his honor, since he would have gone to unimaginable lengths to assist people in need. Let him not be remembered as a drug addict, missing person, or as a Harlem Globetrotter. Let his ultimate goal be to be a foster father and carer, a fighter, and a found father. Moving on to the next case. Patty Inez Brightwell Vaughn of La Vernia. When Patty Inez Brightwell Vaughn of La Vernia, Texas vanished on Christmas in 1996, she was just 32 years old. Patty had 2 sons and a daughter. She was slender and pretty. Patty and her husband Jerry Ray, whom many considered to be domineering and who was referred to as JR by those closest to him, decided to try a trial separation after 13 years of what many would describe as a less than happy marriage. This would signal the start of the end. The 2 adults were seen as wedded until their formal divorce, since Texas does not recognize legal separation. To further cement their separation, though, JR moved into a neighboring San Antonio flat, and Patty remained at home with her 3 young children, ages 8, 6, and 9. According to family-close sources, Patty raised her 3 children with love, dedication, and competence. Following their breakup, Patty started working at Quiney Electric and made amends with Gary, an ex-boyfriend, whom she eventually presented to her family on Christmas Eve. Patty was feeling optimistic about this Christmas season, according to people close to her, and this much-awaited Christmas Eve reunion of her children went well. On Christmas Eve, December 25, 1996, Patty was last seen by anyone other than her soon-to-be ex-husband. Before Patty packed the kids up and drove them to her cousin's house for the holidays, she had an arrangement with her soon-to-be ex-husband JR to have dinner with their 3 kids on Christmas Day. Marilyn, JR's sister, was also supposed to attend this dinner with them. There would never be a dinner. The last time Patty was heard from was when her sister Janine called her early on Christmas Day, the day everyone was supposed to have supper. Instead, JR responded. When Patty's sister was finally able to talk to her, the 18-year-old sister remembers that Patty sounded as though she had been crying. Janine claims that her sister unexpectedly disclosed to them that morning that she and JR had gotten into yet another fight, which had caused her to cry. However, her sister remembers that kind of behavior being commonplace. Janine claims that JR made her cry every holiday, citing a comment from Patty and JR. According to other accounts, when several family members tried to visit Patty during the day, JR reportedly told them she was too sick to see her. That evening, at about 6 o'clock, JR's sister arrived home to prepare supper, but her brother stated that Patty was in bed, feeling under the weather. JR asked to speak with Patty in person. JR eventually admitted to investigators that Patty and he had fought for the most of the day. JR asserts that he and Patty continued to argue after Marilyn took the kids and left, and that Patty became so furious that she drove her 1991 blue Dodge Caravan out of the house. When last seen, she was dressed in black trousers and a cream-colored shirt. Patty had striking curling light brown hair, penetrating green eyes, and a stunning smile. She wore quite a bit of jewelry, including a wedding band, diamond stud earrings, a heart-shaped diamond pendant necklace, a gold watch, a gold ring with a shell-like pattern on her right hand, and maybe a thumb ring. Patty's 2 most distinctive characteristics are the small mole on the right side of her chin and the scar left behind by an appendectomy on her abdomen. When things had been going so well for once, Patty just up and left her life and her family. according to her husband, an untrustworthy source at best. The following day, December 26th, at 1:30 p.m., Patty's supervisor discovered her van parked on Texas State Highway Loop 1604, 15 miles from her residence and 5 miles from her place of employment. The van's tire was flat, but strangely, it had been purposefully flattened. The air had been released. It had been purposefully sabotaged rather than punctured or damaged. JR asserted that he was unaware of this. Investigators discovered indications of recent carpet cleaning inside the van along with blood traces. Using luminol spray, which illuminates in response to the presence of blood, investigators eventually examined the property after allowing ample time for potential offenders to tidy up. Both the bedroom and bathroom floors had blood traces, according to the investigators. Additionally, there were minute amounts of blood on Patty's house's garage mop and bucket. The blood-stained mop appeared to support the theory that someone had cleaned up a crime scene from the bedroom floor, as seen by the noticeable swipe marks on the luminol. JR had returned to the residence the day before Patty vanished without explanation, so investigators decided to ignore the obvious risk and let him remain there while the house was swabbed, searched, and canvassed. JR's sister Marilyn also moved into the house, probably to help with the 3 young, bewildered kids who had been abandoned and left without a mother or any guidance. JR coldly and callously informed the children that their mother had gone voluntarily. During Patty's house, Marilyn was reported to have been a major distraction for the crime scene technicians and to have frequently objected to the detectives' procedures. Detectives discovered a man's red jumpsuit bearing the initials J for me, Sonin, back at the abandoned van that had been discovered the day after Christmas and towed to the police station. JR refused to comply with the police's request for DNA samples from him and the kids, and he didn't give in until the judge signed an order requiring him and the kids to furnish DNA samples for the inquiry into Patty's disappearance. This made it possible to analyze the blood at the house and van and confirm that it belonged to the mother who went missing, not than 24 hours after Patty had allegedly disappeared. The grieving father filed for divorce as he was allegedly still coming to terms with her loss. JR started being evasive and distant from the investigators, refusing to talk to them and preventing the kids from being questioned. But Patty's new partner, Gary, was incredibly helpful and cooperative when it came to the cops. He had a convincing and thorough Christmas Day alibi. Gary was also prepared to offer any supporting documentation that was required. Investigators never thought of Gary as a suspect because they had access to his DNA. People were concerned that JR, a building contractor, would have hidden the evidence of his crime in the school's foundation because he was presently constructing 2 elementary schools in Pleasanton, Texas. However, additional research revealed that the concrete for the foundation he was working on had been set 4 days before Patty vanished. Unidentified female DNA was discovered in 2012 following a retesting of items found in Patty's van. The state has yet to identify this DNA. Although someone close to the inquiry claims they have a solid idea who the DNA might belong to, they don't have enough proof to force that person to provide a DNA sample. Many who have been following this story for the past 23 years think that Marilyn, JR's sister, may be the source of this unidentified female DNA. After relocating to Colorado with his 3 kids, JR went to Idaho, where he currently resides under a false identity. JR hasn't cooperated with any additional inquiries. At one of JR's former houses in Atkins, Wilson County, Texas, detectives dug around in 2014, but they found no new leads. Patty's mother, who regrettably has been denied access to her grandkids for the entire time by JR and his family, is currently suffering from cancer and is in great need of seeing her grandchildren, or at the very least learning where her daughter's remains are located before she passes away. Although no new information has been made public, it is thought that 3 persons may have helped JR commit this crime. Police are assiduously following up on any leads they get. Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed exploring these intriguing cold cases with us. If you found the video fascinating, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to Cold Case Mystique for more deep dives into unsolved mysteries. Your support helps us bring you more compelling content. Leave a comment below with your thoughts or any cases you'd like us to cover next. See you in the next video, and remember, the search for truth never stops.